There is a kind of strength that doesn't announce itself, that doesn't demand to be seen, that exists quietly in the woman who has been broken and still chooses to stand. This is the strength I want to speak to you about today. Not the kind they sell you in magazines or promise you in 10 easy steps. The kind that grows in the dark. The kind that survives what should have destroyed you. The kind that makes you look at yourself in the mirror after everything has fallen apart and say, with tears still wet on your face, I am still here. Because you are still here. And that matters more than anyone has ever told you. We live in a world that loves to celebrate the woman who never stumbles, who never doubts, who moves through life like she was born knowing exactly who she is. But that's not real. That's not how any of us actually live. The truth is messier. The truth is that most of us have spent years trying to figure out who we are underneath all the voices that told us who we should be. Most of us have carried pain we didn't have words for. Most of us have smiled when we were breaking. Most of us have been taught to shrink, to be quiet, to take up less space, to apologize for existing too loudly or feeling too deeply. And somewhere along the way, we forgot that strength isn't about never falling. It's about what you do after you hit the ground. Let me tell you what nobody wants to talk about. Let me tell you about the nights when you felt so alone you thought the silence would swallow you whole. About the mornings when getting out of bed felt like an act of rebellion because everything in you wanted to disappear. About the years you spent believing you weren't enough, that something about you was fundamentally wrong, that if people really knew you, they would leave. About the shame that wrapped itself around your throat and made you afraid to speak. About the way abandonment teaches you to expect it, so you leave before anyone can leave you first. This is the terrain of being human. This is the landscape of survival. And if you're listening to this and something in your chest is tightening, if you're remembering things you've tried to forget, if you're thinking about all the ways you've been hurt or dismissed or made to feel invisible, then you already know what I'm talking about. You already know that the deepest pain isn't always physical. Sometimes it's the erasure. Sometimes it's the silence. Sometimes it's realizing that the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who wounded you most. Sometimes it's the generational weight of women before you who also learned to swallow their voices, who also learned that safety meant smallness, who also believed that their worth was contingent on how well they could serve everyone else's needs while denying their own. But here's what I need you to understand. Here's what took me years to learn and what I'm offering you now as a gift. Your pain is not your identity. Your wounds are not your worth. What happened to you is part of your story, but it is not the entirety of who you are. You are not broken beyond repair. You are not too damaged to deserve love. You are not too much or not enough. You are not the sum total of every person who failed to see you, every relationship that ended, every dream that didn't work out the way you imagined. You are the woman who survived, and survival, real survival, requires a kind of courage that most people will never understand. Think about a tree, not the one that grows in perfect conditions with rich soil and abundant rain. Think about the tree that grows on the side of a cliff, roots digging into stone, branches bent by constant wind. That tree doesn't grow tall and straight. It grows twisted. It grows gnarled, but it grows, and it's stronger than any tree in a greenhouse because it had to learn how to hold on when everything was trying to uproot it. You are that tree. Your roots run deeper than you know. Or think about a river that runs into a mountain. The river doesn't stop. It doesn't turn around and give up. It cuts through stone, slowly, patiently. Over decades and centuries, it carves a canyon. It changes the landscape, not through force, but through persistence, through the quiet, unstoppable power of continuing. This is the first secret. Strength isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. Real strength is the woman who keeps going even when no one is watching, even when no one is applauding, even when the world has told her she has every reason to quit. Real strength is choosing yourself when everyone else has chosen to walk away. I knew a woman once who didn't speak for 3 years, not because she couldn't, because she had learned that her voice was dangerous. She had been punished for speaking her truth, for naming what was wrong, for refusing to pretend that everything was fine when it wasn't. So she went silent. She became a ghost in her own life. She learned to make herself so small that maybe, just maybe, she would finally be safe. But silence doesn't protect you. It suffocates you. One day, she was sitting alone in her apartment, and she heard a song playing from somewhere outside. She couldn't even remember the last time she had sung. But something about that moment, something about the way the light was coming through the window, something about the accumulated weight of all those swallowed words made her open her mouth, and she sang quietly at first, then louder. And she cried while she sang because she realized she had almost forgotten what her own voice sounded like. That was the day she started coming back to herself. Not all at once, not in some dramatic transformation, but slowly, one word at a time, one truth at a time, one moment of refusing to disappear at a time. This is the second secret. Your voice is your birthright. You don't have to earn the right to speak. You don't have to wait for permission to tell your truth. You don't have to modulate yourself into something more palatable, more acceptable, more convenient for people who would rather you stay quiet. Your voice is the evidence of your existence, and you have every right to use it. But I know it's not that simple. I know that speaking up has consequences. I know that telling the truth can cost you relationships, jobs, the approval of people you love. I know that sometimes silence feels like the only option because the alternative is too risky, too painful, too exhausting. So let me be clear. I'm not telling you to be reckless with your voice. I'm not telling you to scream into every void or confront every person who has wronged you. I'm telling you that you deserve to stop performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. I'm telling you that you deserve to stop editing yourself down to something more digestible. I'm telling you that the most radical thing you can do is decide that your truth matters even if no one else agrees. And here's what happens when you start living like that. Here's what happens when you stop apologizing for taking up space. You start to notice the people who can't handle it. You start to see who was only comfortable with you when you were diminished, when you were accommodating, when you needed them more than they needed you. And yes, that hurts. Yes, it feels like loss, but it's also liberation. Because the people who leave when you start growing were never meant to witness your becoming. The third secret is this. Your worth is not determined by who stays or who goes. You are not a home that people get to abandon when something shinier comes along. You are not a placeholder. You are not a consolation prize. You are not the person someone settles for when they can't have who they really want. You are the person. You are the entirety. You are enough exactly as you are right now, with all your messy humanity and unfinished edges and complicated history. I want to tell you about a child I once knew. She was 6 years old, and she loved to dance. She would dance in the kitchen while her mother cooked. She would dance in the hallway between classes. She would dance in her room with the door closed, spinning until she got dizzy, laughing at nothing in particular except the pure joy of movement. And then one day, someone told her she wasn't good at it. Someone told her she looked silly. Someone made her feel ashamed of the thing that brought her the most happiness. So she stopped dancing. She stopped allowing herself that freedom. She learned to be self-conscious. She learned to monitor herself. She learned that joy could be dangerous if someone else decided it was inappropriate. She carried that lesson into adulthood. She became a woman who was always checking herself, always wondering if she was too much, always shrinking to fit into spaces that were never designed for her fullness. She spent decades trying to be acceptable, and it almost killed her. But somewhere in her 40s, something shifted. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was rage. Maybe it was finally understanding that she was going to die one day, and did she really want to spend her entire life worried about what other people thought? She started dancing again, just in her living room at first, then in public. And she didn't care if she looked silly. She didn't care if she wasn't good at it, because it was hers. It was her joy, and no one had the right to take that from her. This is the fourth secret. You don't owe anyone your smallness. You don't owe anyone your silence. You don't owe anyone the performance of being less threatening, less complex, less human than you actually are. The world will ask you to shrink every single day. Your power is in refusing, but refusing requires practice. It requires unlearning. It requires looking at all the ways you've been conditioned to prioritize everyone else's comfort over your own truth, and deciding consciously and consistently to do something different. It means saying no without explanation. It means setting boundaries even when people call you selfish. It means choosing yourself even when you've been taught that self-sacrifice is the highest virtue. It means recognizing that you can be compassionate and kind and generous without erasing yourself in the process. And this is hard. This goes against everything we've been taught. Women especially have been socialized to be caretakers, to be nurturers, to put everyone else first. We've been told that our value lies in how well we serve others, how much we can give, how little we need in return. We've been praised for being low maintenance, for not asking for too much, for being easy to love because we don't require much attention or care. But that's not love. That's exploitation dressed up as virtue. Real love, the kind that actually sustains you, requires you to show up as a whole person. It requires you to have needs and express them. It requires you to take up space. It requires the other person to see you, actually see you, not the edited version you present when you're trying to be acceptable. And if someone can't handle that, if someone needs you to stay small in order to feel comfortable, then they don't love you. They love the idea of you. They love the version of you that serves their needs without challenging them. And you deserve better than that. Before I continue, answer one question honestly. When was the last time you chose yourself without guilt, without justification, without making sure everyone else was okay first? If you're still listening, something inside you is remembering who you are, because you know this already. Maybe you've forgotten. Maybe you've buried it under years of conditioning and compromise. But somewhere deep inside, you know that you were not born to be a supporting character in your own life. You were not born to dim your light so others could shine brighter. You were not born to apologize for existing. You were born with a voice that deserves to be heard, with a story that deserves to be told, with a presence that deserves to take up space, with a heart that deserves to be loved without conditions, without caveats, without the constant fear that one wrong move will make you unworthy. The fifth secret is the hardest one. The fifth secret is that you have to do the work of believing in your own worth, even when the world gives you 1,000 reasons not to. You have to do the work of choosing yourself even when it feels selfish, even when people are disappointed, even when you're terrified of what happens next. This is not a one-time decision. This is a daily practice. Some days it will feel easy. Some days it will feel impossible. Some days you will wake up and feel powerful and clear and certain. Some days you will wake up and doubt everything, and the old patterns will come flooding back, and you'll wonder if maybe everyone was right. Maybe you are too much. Maybe you should just go back to being who they wanted you to be. And on those days, I need you to remember this. Doubt is not evidence. Fear is not truth. The voice in your head that tells you you're not enough is not your voice. It's the accumulated weight of every person who needed you to be smaller so they could feel bigger. It's the echo of a culture that profits from your insecurity. It's the residue of every wound you've ever carried. But it's not who you are. Who you are is the woman who survived the things that should have destroyed her. Who you are is the woman who learned to speak even when her voice shook. Who you are is the woman who chose herself even when it cost her everything familiar. Who you are is the woman who looked at her scars and decided they were proof of survival, not shame. You survive, you endure, you rise. Not because you're superhuman, not because you never break, but because breaking is part of the process. Because healing is not linear. Because strength is not the absence of vulnerability, it's the willingness to be vulnerable and keep going anyway. I want you to think about everything you've survived, not just the big things, not just the traumas that everyone acknowledges, but the small erosions, the daily dismissals, the accumulation of being overlooked, underestimated, interrupted, corrected, questioned, doubted, the exhaustion of having to prove yourself over and over again, the loneliness of being in rooms full of people who don't see you, the grief of losing versions of yourself you had to abandon in order to survive. You carried all of that, and you're still here. Do you understand how extraordinary that is? Do you understand the strength that requires? Most people will never acknowledge it. Most people will look at you and see whatever they need to see. They'll see the version of you that fits their narrative. They'll project their expectations, their fears, their unresolved issues onto you, and they'll judge you based on that projection, not on who you actually are. And that's okay, because their perception of you is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to know yourself, to honor yourself, to build a life that feels true to who you are, not who everyone else thinks you should be. This means you have to get quiet sometimes. You have to turn off the noise. You have to stop consuming everyone else's opinions and get still enough to hear your own voice. You have to ask yourself the hard questions. What do I actually want? What do I actually need? What am I doing out of obligation versus desire? What am I tolerating that I shouldn't? Where am I betraying myself to keep the peace? And then you have to act on the answers, even when it's uncomfortable, even when it disrupts the status quo, even when people are upset with you. Because here's the truth that nobody tells you. You can't control how people react to your growth. You can't manage their disappointment or confusion or anger. You can't make everyone understand, and you'll exhaust yourself trying. What you can do is stay committed to your own becoming. What you can do is refuse to betray yourself for the comfort of others. What you can do is build a life that honors who you are, not who you used to be, not who you're supposed to be, but who you actually are right now. And that person will keep changing. That person will keep evolving. That person will keep shedding old skins and outgrowing old versions and surprising herself with what she's capable of. And that's beautiful. That's the whole point. You're not meant to stay the same. You're not meant to have it all figured out. You're not meant to be perfect or polished or perpetually at peace. You're meant to be alive, fully, messily, gloriously alive. You're meant to feel everything, the joy and the grief, the rage and the tenderness, the certainty and the doubt. You're meant to make mistakes and learn from them. You're meant to fall apart and put yourself back together in new configurations. You're meant to disappoint people. You're meant to disappoint yourself sometimes, because that's how growth happens. That's how you figure out who you are underneath all the expectations. And when you start living like this, when you start prioritizing your own truth over everyone else's comfort, something shifts. You start attracting different people. You start creating different experiences. You start building a life that actually feels like yours. It won't be perfect. It won't look like what you imagined, but it will be real. And real is so much better than pretending. Real is waking up and knowing that you don't have to perform today. Real is having relationships where you can be tired or grumpy or uncertain without worrying that you're going to lose someone's love. Real is pursuing work that matters to you even if it doesn't make sense to anyone else. Real is making choices based on what feels true, not what looks impressive. Real is standing in front of the mirror after years of criticizing every flaw and deciding that you're done fighting your own body, your own face, your own existence. Real is looking at yourself with the same compassion you would offer a friend. Real is understanding that you don't have to be beautiful by conventional standards to be worthy of love and respect and dignity. Real is letting go of the fantasy of who you thought you should be by now and accepting who you actually are. With all your contradictions, with all your unfinished business, with all your beautiful, complicated humanity, this is what it means to be unstoppable. Not that nothing can hurt you, not that you never doubt yourself, not that you have it all together, but that you keep going anyway, that you keep choosing yourself anyway, that you keep speaking your truth anyway, that you keep taking up space anyway. You're unstoppable because you've already survived what should have stopped you. You're unstoppable because you know what it's like to hit bottom and still find a way back up. You're unstoppable because you've learned that you can lose everything external and still have yourself. And that's enough. That's everything. I want to leave you with this. There's a story about a woman who was told her entire life that she was too intense, too emotional, too much. She learned to apologize for her passion. She learned to modulate her enthusiasm. She learned to be smaller, quieter, more palatable. And she was miserable. She felt like she was suffocating, like she was living half a life. And then one day, she met someone who looked at her with genuine curiosity and asked, "Why do you hold yourself back like that?" And she didn't have a good answer. She realized she had been performing for so long that she didn't even know who she was when she wasn't trying to be acceptable. So she started experimenting. She started letting herself be too much. She started expressing opinions without softening them. She started taking up space without apologizing. She started pursuing what excited her without worrying about whether it made sense. And yes, some people were uncomfortable. Yes, she lost some relationships, but she gained herself, and that trade was worth it. She learned that the right people don't need you to be less. The right people celebrate your fullness. The right people want you to take up space because they're secure enough in themselves to not feel threatened by your light. And she learned that being unstoppable doesn't mean being fearless. It means being afraid and doing it anyway. It means doubting yourself and choosing yourself anyway. It means failing and getting back up anyway. It means being hurt and staying open anyway. Because the alternative is worse. The alternative is a life half lived. The alternative is spending decades trying to fit into a box that was never designed for you. The alternative is reaching the end of your life and realizing you never actually showed up as yourself. And you deserve better than that. You deserve a life that feels expansive, not constrictive. You deserve relationships that honor your fullness. You deserve work that engages your talents. You deserve to pursue joy without guilt. You deserve to rest without shame. You deserve to ask for what you need. You deserve to set boundaries. You deserve to change your mind. You deserve to grow in whatever direction feels true. You deserve to be seen, really seen, not as who people want you to be, but as who you actually are, with all your light and all your shadow, with all your strength and all your vulnerability, with all your certainty and all your questions. And if the people around you can't handle that, if they need you to stay small, if they need you to keep playing a role that no longer fits, then it's time to find new people. It's time to build a different kind of community. It's time to surround yourself with people who understand that growth is not betrayal, that changing is not abandonment, that becoming who you're meant to be is not selfishness. This is your one life, your one precious, irreplaceable life. And you can spend it trying to be who everyone else needs you to be, or you can spend it becoming who you actually are. You can spend it shrinking, or you can spend it expanding. You can spend it apologizing, or you can spend it celebrating. The choice is yours. And it's not a one-time choice. It's a choice you make every single day in 1,000 small moments. Every time you speak up instead of staying silent. Every time you set a boundary instead of people-pleasing. Every time you choose your own truth over someone else's comfort. Every time you refuse to betray yourself. These moments add up. These choices accumulate. And over time, they transform you. They transform your life. They transform what you believe is possible. You become the woman you were always meant to be. Not perfect, not finished, but real, authentic, alive. Strong in the way that matters. Strong in your knowing. Strong in your voice. Strong in your refusal to disappear. And that strength, that quiet, unstoppable, deeply rooted strength, that's what changes everything. That's what allows you to walk through the world differently. That's what allows you to build the life you actually want instead of the life you think you're supposed to want. That's what makes you free. So here's what I want you to remember. When the doubt comes back, and it will come back, remember that you've survived before. When the fear tries to silence you, and it will try, remember that your voice is your birthright. When people try to make you small again, and they will try, remember that you don't owe anyone your diminishment. When you forget who you are, and sometimes you will forget, remember that you are the woman who chose herself even when it was hard. You are the woman who kept going even when she wanted to quit. You are the woman who learned to stand even after being knocked down repeatedly. You are enough. You have always been enough. And you will continue to be enough regardless of who sees it, who acknowledges it, who celebrates it. Your worth is not up for debate. Your value is not contingent on anyone else's approval. Your existence is not something you have to justify. You are here. You are alive. You are still becoming. And that is more than enough. If this message spoke to your heart, share it with someone who needs courage today. And if you want more words that remind you of your worth, subscribe, because your voice matters.